My family said I ruined Thanksgiving dinner, so I quietly gathered my coat and left without a word. What they did not know was that I had just discovered the devastating truth about why I was really never welcome at family gatherings. As I walked to my car in the cold November air, my phone buzzed with texts calling me dramatic and selfish. But they had no idea that their perfect family facade was about to crumble, and karma was already setting the wheels in motion. Before we dive into this family revenge story that will shock you to your core, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. If you are ready for a tale of family betrayal, hidden secrets, and the sweetest revenge you have ever heard, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because this story has more twists than a soap opera. Trust me, you will want to stick around until the end to see how justice was finally served on a silver platter. My name is Sage Morrison, and I had always been the family disappointment. For 28 years, I believed I was just the black sheep who could never measure up to my golden child siblings. Every family gathering felt like walking into a courtroom where I was permanently guilty of some unnamed crime. My sister Isabella always got the praise, my brother Marcus always got the support, and I always got the criticism. That Thanksgiving started like every other family dinner from hell. Mom had spent the morning passive-aggressively commenting about how I should have brought a better side dish, how my career as a freelance graphic designer was not a real job, and how I really needed to find a nice man and settle down like Isabella had. Dad just nodded along while reading his newspaper, occasionally grunting in agreement when Mom would say something particularly cutting about my life choices. The breaking point came when Isabella announced she was pregnant with her second child. The whole table erupted in celebration, and Mom immediately started planning the baby shower. Then she turned to me with that familiar look of disappointment and said, "Maybe now you will finally understand what it means to contribute something meaningful to this family, Sage. Some of us actually know how to build a legacy." I felt the familiar sting of tears behind my eyes, but I had promised myself I would not cry at another family dinner. That is when Marcus chimed in with his usual cruelty. "Come on, Mom, do not hold your breath. Sage can barely keep a plant alive, let alone build a family." Everyone laughed except me. I excused myself to the bathroom, but as I walked down the hallway, I heard Mom's voice drifting from the kitchen where she was getting more wine. She was talking to my Aunt Patricia, and what I heard made my blood run cold. "I still cannot believe Richard left everything to Sage in his will," Mom was saying. "Thank God we managed to contest it before she found out about the inheritance. She would have just wasted Uncle Richard's money anyway." My Uncle Richard had died 3 years ago. He was my favorite relative, the only one who ever believed in my dreams and supported my artistic pursuits. I had been devastated when he passed, but the family had told me he died broke, that there was nothing left after his medical bills. Aunt Patricia responded, "Martha, are you sure she does not know? The lawyer said the will was pretty clear about Richard wanting her to have the house and the art collection." "Trust me, she has no idea," Mom replied with a coldness that made my skin crawl. "We told her Richard had debts, and she believed it. Isabella needed that money for her wedding, and Marcus needed it for his business. Sage would have just squandered it on her silly art projects. We made the right choice for the family." I stood frozen in that hallway, feeling like the world had tilted off its axis. My Uncle Richard had left me an inheritance, and my family had stolen it. They had not just stolen money from me. They had stolen his final gesture of love and belief in my potential. They had let me struggle financially for 3 years, while they used my inheritance to fund Isabella's perfect wedding and Marcus's business ventures. The worst part was realizing that their treatment of me was not just casual cruelty. It was calculated. They knew I deserved better, knew Uncle Richard had seen something special in me, and they had actively worked to keep me down and make me feel worthless. I quietly returned to the dining room, my mind racing. When Mom made her comment about contributing something meaningful to the family, I realized she was not just being her usual critical self. She was projecting guilt about what they had done to me, trying to justify their theft by convincing themselves and me that I did not deserve Uncle Richard's legacy. I sat through the rest of that dinner in a haze, watching my family celebrate Isabella's pregnancy. With money that should have been mine, listening to Marcus talk about his thriving business that was built on my stolen inheritance. Every laugh felt like a knife in my chest. Every condescending comment about my struggling career felt like salt in the wound. When dessert was served, Mom made one final dig. "Sage, honey, you have been so quiet. Are you feeling all right? I know family celebrations can be hard when you do not have much to contribute." That was when I stood up, looked around the table at these people who had stolen from me and gaslit me for years, and said simply, "I think I have contributed enough to this family." The table went silent. Isabella looked annoyed. Marcus rolled his eyes, and Dad finally looked up from his phone. Mom just stared at me with that familiar expression of disappointment mixed with irritation. "What is that supposed to mean?" she asked. "Nothing, Mom. Absolutely nothing." I walked to the coat closet with everyone's eyes on me, feeling their judgment and assuming this was just another one of my dramatic exits. But this time was different. This time, I knew the truth. This time, I had a plan forming in my mind that would expose everything they had done. As I reached for my coat, I heard Isabella say, "There she goes again, being dramatic. She really knows how to ruin a perfectly good dinner." Marcus added, "Some people just cannot handle seeing others succeed." I turned around one last time and looked at my family. They had no idea that their perfect little secret was about to become very, very public. They had no idea that the quiet, struggling artist they had been undermining for years was about to become their worst nightmare. "You know what?" I said calmly. "You are absolutely right. I did ruin dinner. But I think you will find that this is just the beginning." With that, I walked out of their house and into the cold November night, already planning my next move. The next morning, I called every law firm in the city until I found someone willing to listen to my story. Attorney Sarah Goldman specialized in inheritance disputes and had a reputation for taking on difficult family cases. When I told her what I had overheard, she immediately asked me to come in for a consultation. "Sage, if what you are telling me is true, this is not just inheritance fraud," Sarah explained as she reviewed the documents I had managed to gather. "This is criminal theft conspiracy and potentially tax evasion if they did not report the inheritance properly." I had spent 3 sleepless nights after Thanksgiving, gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I had contacted Uncle Richard's old neighbors, tracked down his former lawyer, and even found the original will filing at the courthouse. The paper trail was damning. Uncle Richard had indeed left me his house, his art collection worth over $300,000, and a savings account with $50,000. My family had not just contested the will. They had forged documents claiming Uncle Richard was mentally incompetent when he wrote it. They had bribed witnesses and even falsified medical records to support their claim. The depth of their deception was staggering. "The good news is that the statute of limitations has not run out," Sarah continued. "We can file to have the original will reinstated, and we can press criminal charges for fraud. But Sage, you need to understand that once we start this process, there is no going back. Your family will know that you know, and they will fight dirty." I thought about all the years of feeling worthless, all the times they had made me question my own value and potential. I thought about Uncle Richard, who had believed in me enough to leave me everything he had worked for his entire life. I thought about how they had celebrated Isabella's pregnancy with my money just days before. I want to proceed, I told Sarah, but I want to do this strategically. I do not want them to know what is coming until it is too late for them to cover their tracks or intimidate witnesses. Sarah smiled grimly. I like your thinking. Let me make some calls. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah and her team worked quietly to build an airtight case. We discovered that my father had been the mastermind behind the fraud, using his position as a bank manager to manipulate financial records. Mom had coordinated the witness tampering, and Isabella and Marcus had been willing participants who benefited from the stolen inheritance. The art collection alone was worth more than I had imagined. Uncle Richard had been collecting pieces from local artists for 40 years, and several of the paintings had appreciated significantly in value since his death. The house was in a neighborhood that had gentrified dramatically, making it worth nearly $500,000. But the most damaging evidence came from an unexpected source. Uncle Richard's neighbor, Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore, had kept detailed journals of everything that happened on their street. She had recorded the dates when my family had come to clear out Uncle Richard's house, noting that they had hired a moving truck and taken everything in broad daylight while telling neighbors they were handling his estate. Your uncle talked about you constantly, Mrs. Whitmore told me during our meeting at Sarah's office. He was so proud of your art, always showing me pictures of your work on his phone. He told me multiple times that he was leaving everything to you because you were the only one in the family who truly understood his passion for art. She handed me a manila envelope. He asked me to give this to you if anything ever happened to him, and your family tried to keep you away from his memorial service or his belongings. Inside the envelope was a letter in Uncle Richard's handwriting, along with photographs of all his art pieces and a detailed inventory of everything he owned. The letter was addressed to me personally, expressing his love and his hope that his legacy would help me pursue my artistic dreams without financial worry. But the most shocking revelation was in the final paragraph. Sage, I want you to know that I have been aware of how your family treats you for years. I have seen the way they diminish your accomplishments and make you feel small. This inheritance is not just about money or art. It is about giving you the freedom to build a life away from their toxicity and the validation that someone in this family recognizes your worth. Reading those words, I broke down crying in Sarah's office. Uncle Richard had seen everything, had understood the dynamics that I thought I was imagining or exaggerating. His gift was not just financial. It was emotional validation that I was not crazy for feeling like the family scapegoat. This letter is powerful evidence, Sarah said gently. But more importantly, it shows that your uncle's intentions were clear and that he was mentally competent when he made these decisions. This completely destroys their case about his mental state. We decided to coordinate our legal action with the family's next big gathering, Isabella's baby shower, which was scheduled for the weekend before Christmas. It would be perfect timing because the whole extended family would be there, including Aunt Patricia and other relatives who had been complicit in keeping the secret. We will serve the papers at the baby shower, Sarah explained. It is a public setting, so they cannot claim they did not receive proper notice, and the humiliation of being exposed in front of the entire family will prevent them from trying to spin the narrative or play victim. As the date approached, I felt a mixture of terror and excitement. For 28 years, I had been the family disappointment. In a few days, I would become the family nightmare. But more importantly, I would finally get justice for Uncle Richard and reclaim the legacy he had intended for me. The Friday before the baby shower, Sarah called me with news that made my hands shake. Sage, we just received confirmation from the FBI that they are opening a criminal investigation based on our evidence. The bank fraud alone could result in serious federal charges for your father. That Saturday morning, I put on my best dress and drove to Isabella's baby shower with legal documents hidden in my purse and FBI agents waiting for my signal. As I walked into the country club where the shower was being held, I saw my entire family celebrating with decorations and gifts, purchased with my stolen inheritance. It was time for the truth to finally come to light. Walking into that baby shower felt like entering enemy territory. But I had learned something important over the past month of legal preparation. I was not as alone as my family had made me believe. Uncle Richard's neighbors, his former colleagues, and even some distant relatives had all stepped forward to support my case once they learned what had happened. The country club was decorated in pink and gold, Isabella's favorite colors, with an elaborate dessert table and flower arrangements that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I watched Mom fluttering around playing the perfect hostess while Dad worked the room like the respectable banker he pretended to be. Marcus was holding court near the bar, telling stories about his successful business ventures, completely unaware that his success was built on stolen foundations. I found a seat in the back and waited. Sarah had coordinated everything perfectly. The process servers would arrive at exactly 2 o'clock, right when the gift opening ceremony was supposed to begin. But first, I needed to gather more evidence and identify which family members were truly innocent versus those who were complicit. That is when I noticed my cousin David, Uncle Richard's son, from his first marriage, sitting alone in the corner, looking uncomfortable. David had been estranged from our family for years after some unspecified falling out, and I had always wondered why he never came to family gatherings anymore. Seeing him here looking miserable and out of place made me curious. I approached him carefully. "David, I am surprised to see you here. I thought you and Mom did not speak anymore." His face darkened immediately. "Your mother insisted I come today. She said it would look bad for the family if Uncle Richard's only son was not here to celebrate his niece's baby shower." He paused, studying my face. "But honestly, Sage, I am only here because I wanted to talk to you." My heart started racing. "About what? About what they did to you? About Uncle Richard's will?" I felt like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. "You know..." David nodded grimly. "I have known since the beginning. My father told me about his will months before he died. He was so excited about leaving you his collection and the house. He said you were the only one in the family who really understood art the way he did." The pieces started falling into place. "That is why you have been avoiding family gatherings. You knew what they did." "I tried to stop it," David said, his voice heavy with guilt. "When my father died, and your parents started talking about contesting the will, I told them it was wrong. I said Uncle Richard was completely mentally competent and that his wishes should be respected, but they threatened to cut me out of everything if I interfered." I felt a surge of anger mixed with hope. "So you have known for 3 years that they stole my inheritance, and you said nothing. I know how that sounds," David said quickly. "But you have to understand the position they put me in. My business was struggling. My kids needed college tuition, and your parents made it clear that if I supported you, they would make sure I lost everything. They control most of the family's social and financial connections." I was about to respond when my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Servers are in position. Are you ready?" I looked at David, seeing an opportunity I had not expected. "David, in about 10 minutes, this whole family is going to be exposed for what they really are. The question is, are you going to keep protecting them? Or are you finally going to do the right thing?" Before he could answer, Aunt Patricia approached our table with a forced smile. "Sage, honey, I am so surprised to see you here. After your dramatic exit at Thanksgiving, your mother was not sure you would come." I smiled sweetly back at her. I would not miss celebrating Isabella's pregnancy for the world. After all, this family knows how important it is to support each other, right? Patricia's smile faltered slightly, probably picking up on the edge in my voice. "Of course, dear. Family always comes first." "Absolutely," I agreed. Speaking of family, Aunt Patricia, I was just telling David about some interesting things I learned recently about Uncle Richard's estate. I am sure you remember how devastating it was when we found out he died with so many debts. Patricia's face went white. She glanced nervously at David, then back at me. Yes, well, Richard always was terrible with money. Such a shame. David was watching this exchange with growing awareness of what was about to happen. I could see him making a decision in real time. Actually, Aunt Patricia, David said slowly, I do not think Uncle Richard was terrible with money at all. In fact, I think he was quite generous, especially to certain family members. Now Patricia looked genuinely panicked. David, I think maybe we should talk about this another time. No, David said, standing up. I think now is perfect. He turned to me. Sage, whatever you are planning, I want to help. I have been a coward for 3 years, and I am done protecting people who do not deserve protection. That was the moment when everything shifted. I was not just fighting alone anymore. I had an ally from within the family itself. And not just any ally, Uncle Richard's son, whose testimony would be impossible to dismiss or discredit. At exactly 2 o'clock, as Isabella was opening her first baby gift, 3 processed servers walked into the country club dining room. The first one approached Mom, who was standing near the gift table beaming with pride. Martha Morrison, yes. You are being served with legal papers regarding inheritance fraud and criminal conspiracy in the matter of Richard Morrison's estate. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop as the servers moved through the room serving papers to Dad Isabella Marcus and Aunt Patricia. Each one reacted with shock and confusion except for Dad, whose face immediately went gray with understanding. Mom looked at the papers in her hand like they were written in a foreign language. I do not understand. What is this about? That was when I stood up from my table in the back of the room. It is about Uncle Richard's will, Mom. The real will. The one where he left everything to me. Every eye in the room turned to me. I could see the moment when comprehension dawned on each of their faces. The moment they realized I knew everything. Isabella dropped the baby gift she had been holding. Sage, what are you talking about? David stood up beside me. She is talking about how you all conspired to steal her inheritance and then gaslit her for 3 years about being a family disappointment. The room erupted in chaos. Extended family members started asking questions, children started crying because of the tension, and Mom looked like she was going to faint. But the most satisfying moment was watching Dad, the mastermind behind it all, realize that his careful criminal conspiracy was unraveling in the most public way possible. Justice was finally being served, and I was just getting started. What do you think will happen next? Should I continue with the rest of Sage's story? The drama is about to get even more intense. The chaos in that country club dining room was everything I had dreamed of for weeks. Mom was frantically calling Dad's lawyer, Isabella, was crying about how this was ruining her special day, and Marcus was demanding to see my evidence like he had any right to question me. But the sweetest part was watching the extended family members piece together what had really happened. Wait, said my great-aunt Helen, Uncle Richard's sister. Are you saying that Richard left Sage his house and art collection and you all hid it from her? David stepped forward, his voice carrying across the room. That is exactly what happened, Aunt Helen. I watched them forge documents, bribe witnesses, and steal everything Uncle Richard wanted Sage to have. The room was dividing into factions right before my eyes. The older relatives who remembered Uncle Richard were looking at my parents with disgust, while some of the younger cousins seemed confused about who to believe. But I felt confident with David by my side, finally having family support after years of isolation. That confidence lasted exactly 48 hours. On Monday morning, my phone rang at 6 a.m. It was Sarah, and her voice was tense. Sage, we have a problem. David just called my office and withdrew his statement. I sat up in bed, instantly awake. What do you mean he withdrew his statement? He is claiming he was mistaken about the details of his uncle's will and that he cannot testify on your behalf after all. Worse than that, he is now supporting your family's version of events. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. That is impossible. He was ready to help me expose everything just 2 days ago. I know, and I am sorry. But without David's testimony, we lose our strongest witness. He was the one family member who could corroborate Uncle Richard's mental competency and intentions. I spent that entire day trying to reach David, but he would not take my calls. Finally, I drove to his office, determined to confront him face to face. When I walked into his insurance company, he looked genuinely scared to see me. "Sage, please. I cannot talk to you about this anymore." "David, what happened? What did they do to you?" He glanced around nervously, then pulled me into his private office and closed the door. "They threatened my business, Sage. Your father went to my biggest clients and told them I was involved in a family scandal that could damage their reputations by association. I lost 3 major accounts on Sunday alone." "So you are just going to let them get away with this?" "It is not that simple," David exploded, then immediately lowered his voice. "I have employees, Sage. I have a mortgage and kids in college. Your parents made it clear that they will destroy everything I have worked for if I testify against them." I felt sick. So their money and power trumps doing the right thing. David could not meet my eyes. "I am sorry. I really am. But I cannot sacrifice my family's security for this fight." Walking out of David's office, I felt more alone than ever. Not only had I lost my key ally, but I now understood how my family maintained their control. They did not just steal and lie. They systematically destroyed anyone who threatened to expose them. That evening, Sarah called with more bad news. "Your father's lawyer filed a motion claiming that your case is based on false accusations from a mentally unstable family member seeking revenge for perceived slights." Perceived slights. They are painting you as the disturbed black sheep who has always resented your family's success. They are bringing up every time you had a conflict with them, every family gathering where you left early, every time you complained about feeling excluded. They are building a narrative that you are an unreliable narrator seeking revenge. The worst part was that some of it was true. I had left family gatherings early. I had complained about feeling excluded. I had expressed resentment about my siblings' successes. They were taking my genuine emotional responses to years of mistreatment and weaponizing them against me. What does this mean for our case? It means we need to be prepared for them to fight dirty. Your family has money connections and now a unified front. They are going to attack your credibility, your mental health, and your motives. That night, I called my therapist, Dr. Martinez, whom I had been seeing for 2 years to deal with family trauma. "Dr. Martinez, I need to ask you something important. If my family's lawyers subpoena my therapy records, what will they find?" There was a pause. "Sage, our sessions are confidential, but if you are asking whether you have ever expressed anger or resentment toward your family, the answer is yes. That was the whole point of therapy, processing those feelings." My heart sank. So they can use my own therapy sessions against me. They can try, but seeking mental health treatment actually demonstrates emotional maturity and self-awareness. However, I understand your concern. The next few weeks were brutal. My family's legal team launched a systematic campaign to destroy my credibility. They dug up every mistake I had ever made, every failed relationship, every time I had struggled financially. They painted me as an unstable person who had always blamed others for my problems. Isabella gave a statement claiming I had always been jealous of her success and had made inappropriate comments about her wedding expenses. Marcus provided evidence of times I had borrowed money from family members, suggesting I was financially irresponsible and desperate. Even some of my cousins came forward with stories about times I had seemed weird or dramatic at family events. The most devastating blow came when they produced witnesses who claimed Uncle Richard had expressed concerns about my stability in his final months. A nurse from his care facility testified that he had mentioned worrying about what Sage might do with any inheritance. Sitting in Sarah's office, reviewing their counter evidence, I felt completely defeated. They have turned everything against me. Every genuine emotion I ever expressed, every time I tried to set boundaries, every moment of vulnerability. They have twisted it all into evidence that I am the problem. Sage, Sarah said gently, I need to be honest with you. This case has become much more difficult than I anticipated. Your family has substantial resources and they are using them effectively. We might want to consider a settlement. A settlement, so they get to keep my inheritance and I get some small payment to go away quietly. It might be better than losing everything and being left with legal bills you cannot afford. I stared out the window of Sarah's office, watching people go about their normal lives, while mine was being systematically destroyed by the people who were supposed to love me. For a moment, I almost gave up, almost accepted that they had won through sheer force of money and influence. But then I thought about Uncle Richard's letter, about how he had seen their treatment of me and wanted to give me the freedom to escape it. Giving up now would not just mean losing money. It would mean letting them rewrite history and validate their narrative that I was the problem all along. Just when I thought all hope was lost, salvation came from the most unexpected source. On a Friday morning in February, I received a call from a woman named Dr. Rebecca Torres, who introduced herself as a forensic accountant. Miss Morrison, I hope you do not mind me reaching out directly, but I have been following your case in the legal community, and I believe I have information that could be crucial to your lawsuit. What kind of information? I specialize in investigating financial fraud, and your father's name came up in connection with another case I am working on. I think we should meet in person to discuss this. Dr. Torres's office was in a sleek downtown building, and she had the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who spent her days uncovering financial crimes. When I arrived, she had multiple computer screens open and stacks of documents covering her desk. Sage, what I am about to show you goes far beyond your inheritance case. Your father has been running sophisticated financial schemes for years, and your family's theft of Uncle Richard's estate is just the tip of the iceberg. She turned one of her computer screens toward me. I was hired by the FBI to investigate a series of suspicious transactions at your father's bank. What I found was a pattern of inheritance manipulation that goes back over a decade. The evidence was staggering. Dad had been systematically identifying elderly bank customers with substantial estates and no close family oversight. He would then manipulate their estate planning, sometimes forging wills, sometimes pressuring them to change beneficiaries, always ensuring that the money flowed through accounts he could control. Your Uncle Richard was not his first victim, Sage. He was number 7. Dr. Torres showed me case after case of elderly clients whose estates had been diverted from their intended beneficiaries. In each instance, Dad had used his position as a trusted bank manager to gain access to confidential information and exploit vulnerable customers. But here is the thing that makes your case special, Dr. Torres continued. Uncle Richard was the only victim who had a family member smart enough and persistent enough to investigate. You pursuing your inheritance claim led us to uncover this entire criminal enterprise. She handed me a thick folder. This is why I wanted to meet with you personally. The FBI wants to offer you a deal. If you cooperate with their investigation and allow us to use your case as the foundation for criminal charges against your father, they will not only ensure that you get your full inheritance back, but they will also provide protection against any retaliation from your family. I felt dizzy looking at the scope of Dad's crimes. How much money are we talking about? Over $2 million stolen from various estates over 12 years. Your uncle's estate was worth about $800,000 total, making it one of the largest single thefts. But the best part was yet to come. Dr. Torres opened another file and showed me bank records that made my hands shake. We also discovered that your siblings' success stories are not what they seem. Isabella's husband's business was failing before they got married, and Marcus's company has been operating at a loss for 2 years. They have both been living off stolen money, and now that we are freezing those accounts, their financial house of cards is about to collapse. They are going to lose everything. Everything they gained through your father's crimes. Yes. Their houses were purchased with fraudulent funds, their businesses were supported by stolen money, and their lifestyle has been built on financial crimes. The IRS is already investigating them for tax evasion related to unreported inheritance income. For the first time in months, I felt hope. But Dr. Torres was not finished. There is one more thing, Sage. Remember David, your cousin, who withdrew his testimony? Unfortunately, yes. He came forward again yesterday. Apparently, your father approached him after the baby shower and offered him $50,000 to change his story. David recorded the entire conversation. She played an audio recording on her computer. Dad's voice was crystal clear as he offered David money to lie under oath and threatened to destroy his business if he supported me. It was textbook witness tampering, and it was recorded evidence of additional federal crimes. David realized that your father was never going to stop threatening him, so he decided to get evidence and come clean. He is now cooperating fully with the FBI investigation. I started crying right there in Dr. Torres's office. After months of feeling like I was fighting alone against an impossible system, I suddenly had the full weight of federal law enforcement on my side. What happens next? Next week, the FBI will execute search warrants on your father's home office and bank. Your mother and siblings will also be arrested as co-conspirators. The stolen assets will be frozen pending trial, and you will receive a full restoration of your inheritance plus damages. And my family? Dr. Torres' expression was grim. Your father is looking at 20 to 30 years in federal prison. Your mother and siblings will likely face shorter sentences if they cooperate, but their lives as they know them are over. As I drove home that day, I thought about the scared, gaslighted woman who had walked out of Thanksgiving dinner 3 months earlier. That woman believed she was the family failure, the disappointment who could never measure up. But the truth was that I had been the biggest threat to their criminal enterprise precisely because I was honest and principled in ways they could never understand. Uncle Richard had not just left me money and art. He had left me the key to exposing years of criminal behavior and bringing justice to multiple victims. His final gift was not just financial freedom. It was the power to stop predators who had been destroying families for over a decade. The FBI raids happened on a Tuesday morning in March, and I watched the news coverage from my apartment with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Seeing Dad led away in handcuffs was surreal after a lifetime of him being the respected family patriarch. Mom looked completely broken as agents carried boxes of evidence out of their house, and I almost felt sorry for her until I remembered how she had orchestrated the witness tampering and gaslit me for years. Marcus and Isabella were arrested at their respective workplaces, which added to the public humiliation. The local news covered the story extensively, describing it as the largest inheritance fraud scheme in the state's recent history. Watching Isabella's mugshot on television was particularly satisfying, knowing that her perfect life built on stolen money was finally crumbling. The legal proceedings moved quickly once the federal government took over. Dad pleaded guilty to 12 counts of inheritance fraud, witness tampering, and conspiracy, receiving a 25-year sentence. Mom got 8 years for her role in the conspiracy. Marcus and Isabella each received 5 years, though Isabella's sentence was reduced because she was pregnant and agreed to testify against Dad about the scope of his crimes. But the real justice came in the financial consequences. Not only did I receive Uncle Richard's full inheritance, but the court awarded me additional damages for emotional distress and lost investment opportunities. The house alone had appreciated to $600,000, and the art collection was valued at over $400,000 after a proper appraisal. More importantly, I was not the only victim who received justice. Dr. Torres and the FBI investigation led to restitution for 6 other families whose inheritances had been stolen over the years. Elderly victims who had died believing their families would be provided for were finally having their wishes honored. The most unexpected development was my relationship with David. His decision to record Dad's bribery attempt had been the final nail in the coffin, and his testimony helped convict the entire conspiracy. More than that, working together through the investigation had rebuilt our relationship and given me the family ally I had always needed. I should have stood up to them from the beginning, David told me as we sorted through Uncle Richard's art collection in what was now my house. I let them intimidate me for years, and I'm sorry it took this long for me to do the right thing. The important thing is that you did it eventually, I replied, hanging one of Uncle Richard's favorite paintings in my new living room. And now other families will not have to go through what we did. Living in Uncle Richard's house felt like coming home in a way I had never experienced. Every room held memories of family gatherings from my childhood when Uncle Richard had made me feel valued and encouraged my artistic interests. Now I understood that he had been protecting me from the family toxicity, even then giving me a safe space to be myself. But the most healing part of this journey was building my chosen family. Dr. Torres had become a close friend and mentor, teaching me about financial management and helping me invest my inheritance wisely. Sarah remained my attorney and had become someone I could trust with my deepest fears and hopes. David and I had grown closer than we had ever been as children, bonding over our shared experience of surviving family dysfunction. I also reconnected with Mrs. Whitmore, Uncle Richard's neighbor, who had become like a grandmother to me. She shared stories about Uncle Richard's final years and how proud he had been of my artistic achievements. Through her, I learned about the person he really was beyond the family dynamics, a kind, generous man who had spent his retirement volunteering at art therapy programs for trauma survivors. "Your uncle would be so proud of how you handled this situation," Mrs. Whitmore told me over tea in my new garden. "He always said you had more strength than you realized, and more integrity than the rest of your family combined." The art collection became the foundation for something beautiful and meaningful. I donated several pieces to the local art therapy center where Uncle Richard had volunteered, creating a permanent exhibition in his memory. Other pieces I kept, finally having the space and financial security to display them properly. But the most special piece was a small watercolor painting that Uncle Richard had created himself, a landscape of the view from his back garden, which was now my back garden. Opening my own art therapy practice had always been a dream, but I had never had the financial stability to pursue it. With my inheritance properly invested, I was able to rent studio space and begin working with trauma survivors, using art as a tool for healing and expression. Many of my first clients were people who had experienced family betrayal or financial abuse, and I found that my own experience gave me unique insight into their healing process. The most meaningful moment came 6 months after the trials ended, when I received a letter from one of the other inheritance fraud victims. Mrs. Patricia Williams, whose late husband's estate had been stolen 5 years earlier, wrote to thank me for pursuing my case and making it possible for her to recover her inheritance. "Because of your courage, I was able to buy back my husband's family farm and pass it on to our children as he intended," she wrote. "You gave justice not just to yourself, but to all of us who had been silenced and cheated. Thank you for being braver than the rest of us. Reading that letter, I finally understood the full scope of what Uncle Richard's gift had made possible. It was not just about money or art or even personal justice. It was about standing up to predators who used family relationships and social power to exploit vulnerable people. It was about refusing to be silenced or gaslit into accepting abuse. It was about choosing integrity over comfort, truth over peace. Now, as I sit in Uncle Richard's study writing this story, surrounded by his books and art, and the afternoon light streaming through windows that are finally mine, I want to share the most important lesson I learned through this experience. Sometimes the family that rejects you is doing you a favor by showing you that you deserve better. If you have made it to the end of this story, I want to know: have you ever experienced family betrayal that made you question your own reality? Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace and seeking justice? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts, because family karma stories like this need to be shared so other people know they are not alone in their struggles. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help other people find it, and subscribe to my channel, because I share more stories about standing up to toxic family dynamics and finding your chosen family. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve better than family members who diminish their worth. Thank you for listening to my story and for supporting my journey toward healing and justice. Remember that you are worthy of love, respect, and honesty from the people in your life, and never let anyone convince you otherwise. Sometimes, the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from people who do not value you, even when they share your DNA. Until next time, keep standing up for yourself and choosing the family that chooses you back.